This spring marks the 50th edition of the Harvard Youth Poll, and the results paint a picture of a generation under pressure. Since 2000, the Harvard Public Opinion Project has conducted the nation's largest and longest-running survey on the political attitudes of young Americans. Here's what we found in our latest edition of our nationwide poll. Take it away.
Young Americans are struggling. More than 4 in 10 say that they're barely getting by financially, and some groups are hit harder than others.
Half of young adults without college degrees report financial hardship, compared to just 29% of college grads.
Women and Hispanic youth are especially affected. Nearly half say they're struggling or getting by with limited financial security.
Overall, only 16% of 18 through 29-year-olds say they're doing well or very well financially.
Today, less than half of young Americans feel a sense of community, and just 17% say they're deeply connected to one.
Fewer small-town or rural residents report feeling connected to their communities than urban or suburban residents.
And those not affiliated with a political party reported much lower rates of community belonging than those who are.
Why does it matter? Young Americans who don't belong to a community feel disconnected from politics and are struggling with their mental health.
This disconnect is more than just political, it's social and emotional too. 5 years after the COVID-19 pandemic, 1 in 3 young Americans report that the pandemic had a lasting negative impact on their social life.
Notably, that impact is closely correlated with mental health. Those who became isolated are more likely to suffer from depression than those whose friendships remained intact during the pandemic.
Even among those who say they formed meaningful online friendships during the pandemic, the results remain troubling. 27% show signs of moderately severe or severe depression.
This social isolation comes alongside a generational shift away from traditional family structures. Only about half of young Americans say having kids is important, the lowest ranked life goal we asked about. But there's a clear partisan divide here. Nearly 7 in 10 young Republicans value parenthood, compared to just 4 in 10 Democrats and independents.
Republicans are also more confident than Democrats in their ability to achieve these goals, from home ownership to marriage. And while financial stability remains a top goal for Gen Z, only 56% think they'll be able to achieve it.
Women are more confident than men about finding a partner and getting married, and are also more likely to say agreeing on politics is important in a relationship.
Young Americans are dissatisfied with U.S. politics and institutions. Only 15% think the country is headed in the right direction, and only 1 in 5 young Americans trust the federal government to do the right thing most of the time.
31% of 18 to 29-year-olds approve of President Trump's job performance.
And approval of both parties in Congress is even lower. Just 29% approve of congressional Republicans, and 23% approve of congressional Democrats.
The lack of confidence in leadership is part of a deeper skepticism about who exactly holds power. The majority of young Americans believe that elites serve themselves over the public interest. Interestingly enough, this sentiment is strongest among the wealthy, the higher educated, and Democrats, all more likely to be elites themselves.
We asked about 8 key elements of President Trump's agenda, from tariffs and DOGE to abolishing the Department of Education. By and large, these policies are not popular among Gen Z, though many young Americans don't seem to have an opinion either way.
The policy with the highest amount of support amongst young Americans is the creation of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, but still more young Americans oppose it than support it.
And as tariffs take center stage, just 1 in 5 young Americans support them.
Democrats are united in opposition against the policies we asked about. However, a large portion of young Republicans are uncertain about these policies.
At the same time, the number of young Americans who believe there's a crisis at the southern border has dropped to 42%. 11 points down from last spring, with the sharpest drop coming from young Democrats.
Looking at foreign policy, support for U.S. involvement abroad is low. A plurality of young Americans believe that the United States spends too much money on other countries. But this is primarily driven by young Republicans, 61% of whom hold that view. But when is it acceptable for the United States to get involved abroad? For Democrats, it's to defend human rights and protect allies. For Republicans, it's to protect national security goals. But despite their emphasis on national security, Republicans are growing increasingly skeptical of our alliances. 6 years ago, it was Republicans over Democrats who prioritized alliances. But today, on almost every question we asked, it's Democrats, not Republicans, who support defending alliances.
Finally, we looked at young people's values and how they apply to political issues today. For example, more young Americans believe that DEI promotes fairness rather than believing it reduces fairness. though these views are mostly a function of partisanship.
Just 1 in 5 say they've been personally impacted, positively or negatively, by DEI initiatives. Most either haven't encountered them, aren't sure, or were unaffected.
Across party lines, young Americans describe individual rights and freedoms as defining American values, but agreement ends there. Young Democrats select diversity, democracy, and civic engagement as other key values, while Republicans select economic opportunity and Christian values.
Overall, 41% of 18 to 29-year-olds are proud to be American, with 29% feeling embarrassed and 26% are neither. 3/4 of young Republicans are proud to be American, compared to just 1/4 of young Democrats.
The 50th Harvard Youth Poll finds young Americans facing financial strain, political polarization, and extremely low levels of trust in government and institutions. But beneath that pessimism lies a generation that, despite the pressure, is committed to shaping a better future. For more, go to iop.harvard.edu or follow us on social media @HarvardIOP.